Hey everybody, I'm your host Cal, and I'd like to talk to you guys about digital art. Up until now, you guys have seen me speak exclusively about traditional art. Now it's time to get into the digital realm of artwork, which means you get to see me use my computer. A quick note before we begin. I use Paint Tool Sai to do all of my digital artwork. That said, you can still use Photoshop and other types of programs because they use some of the same functions and have some of the same filters. Alright, let's get to it.
For Sai users, this is what it will look like when you open up a new picture file. First, I'll go over some of the basic functions. Layers allow you to put different pieces of artwork in different areas. You can have about as many layers as the program will allow. Now there are two kinds of layers, the normal layer and the vector layer. Vector layers allow you to use the pen, line, and curve tools, in addition to some other tools that are not available on the standard layers. I'm going to show you how the vector layer works. With the vector layer selected, I then select the pen tool. Then, holding the mouse button down, I'm going to draw a line. Looks like a normal line, right? Plot twist, it's not. There are individual nodes located throughout the line, which can be clicked and dragged into new positions. You can do this by holding down the control key and moving your mouse in any direction. Selecting the line tool will allow you to draw a straight line in any direction. Just point and click. Let's say you want a bolder line than that. Just go down to the width that you want and select it. Then create a line based on that width. Now we have multiple lines, all different widths. Pretty easy, right? Now let's check out the curve tool. The curve tool works exactly like the line tool, with one major difference. Every time you continue along the line by placing a new node, it will create a curve, which will follow whatever direction your mouse was pointing. Yes, I am in fact using a mouse. As noted in one of my previous videos, I don't use pen tablets. Another cool tool that you can use here is the pressure sensitivity button. This will allow you to change the widths at will of any node in a vector line. So we've selected a node in this line, and now we're going to move the mouse to the left. This in turn will cause the line to get smaller. We select another node, and it does the exact same thing. Moving the mouse to the right will make the node bigger once it's selected. This is handy for creating all sorts of effects. The only catch is, it only works on vector layers in conjunction with the curve and line tools. Every now and then we all make a mistake that we need to get rid of. This is where the eraser tool comes in handy. Another handy tool to consider is the width tool. Select the width that you want, then look at an existing line and click it. This will make the line that width. Similarly, the color tool allows you to change colors of the existing lines. Say you don't like the black one, switch over to the yellow swatch and click that. And now we have a yellow line. I don't like the yellow line. Let's go back to black. The color tool is line-based, not node-based. So whatever line you click, all of it's going to be affected, not just one part. You've seen me swap between colors of yellow and black, but how did I get those? Let's start out with the color wheel here. The color wheel has one square in the middle, and it has a circle on the outside, representing all of the different colors. Whichever way you rotate around it will get you a different color. And whichever way you rotate it in the middle will get you a different shade of that color. For example, moving it towards the black region will result in a darker color. Moving it towards the lighter regions will result in a lighter color. Moving it down and to the left will result in a slightly grayish version of the color. Moving it over to the right will result in a deeper, richer, but also darker color. Unless you're in the top side, which will move it towards the lighter colors. For some people, it's a little difficult to get used to these concepts, so take some time to experiment with it. The eraser tool functions like a typical brush. You can increase or decrease the width by going over to the slider on the side and moving it right or left. Now, on a normal layer, I'm going to select the pen tool. First, I'll set my color to black. Then I'll draw a line. Now I'll select the eraser tool. I'll set the density lower than 100. And then I'll try to erase. Notice how it creates the effect of the line fading out of existence. This is really useful for creating a lot of different kinds of effects. Okay, so you've seen what the pen tool and the eraser tool can do. Let's try out the airbrush tool. The airbrush tool functions a lot like a can of spray paint, but you can adjust how the spray paint comes out of the can and the resulting pattern using the airbrush filters. I select a filter known as noise. This results in a cloudy looking effect. I have the density of my airbrush set to the exact same as I had my eraser set to. The resulting effect starts out light, but it gets darker as I draw over what I've already done. This is really useful for creating smoke effects, among other things. Like with any photo editor, Sai has a select tool. There are several different versions of it. This version is called the select brush. This allows me to paint over whatever I would like to select. Whatever is selected becomes blue. Then when I click the freeform selector tool up in the corner, the one that looks like a square, I'm then able to pick up this object and move it around however I would like. This also opens up the options to transform, free edit, resize, and rotate whatever object is selected. There are 3 more variants of the select tool. The square select tool forms a square around whatever you would like to select. The lasso tool can be used to draw shapes around whatever you need to select. And the wand tool selects a general area. Now I'm going to use all of the tools previously mentioned to create a space scene. I'll start out with about 9 layers, including 1 vector layer. I choose a black background on the first layer. I'm not satisfied with the secondary color that I had selected, so I'll use the slider tools to select a kind of purple-blue color. Then, using the airbrush tool, with a density set to 6, I'll add in a ghostly blue-purple effect to make this space look more interesting. For the third layer, I want something a little bit different, so I decide on a darker blue. Again, I use the airbrush, same settings. Here, I go back to the second layer for a minute, and I start playing around with the multiple options in the blend mode area. Each one produces a very slightly different effect. Then, when I've got one that I'm satisfied with, I go into the third layer and adjust that one, along with the opacity, in order to create an effect that I'm satisfied with. This is very similar to Photoshop's filters option. For layer 4, I'm going with a lighter blue this time. Layer 5 is going to be my star layer. I've changed the primary color to white. I'll use the airbrush tool to create a small white glow. Then I'll place a white dot in the center of it as my star. I'm not entirely happy with the glow effect I started out with, so I add a little bit more with the airbrush tool until I'm happy. There, now I have a star. Now, I don't want to individually create all of my stars. That would get really tiresome and tedious. A simpler way of making this happen is to duplicate the layers. Of course, I don't want all of them to look the same, so I manually adjust the size of each duplicate to add a little variety. Then, once I have the right sizes, I continue duplicating. I'll fast forward this part a little bit. Now I've got a bunch of stars, and I've got them sitting the way I want them to. The trouble is, they're only taking up 1/4 of the image. Oh well, no problem. I'll just combine all of the star layers into one layer and duplicate that layer. Then move the duplicates all around the place, resizing as I need to. Stars do follow some preconceived patterns, so it's not entirely unrealistic to set them up like this. Having accomplished all that, I'll set the stars and the rest of the background up in a folder called BG. Okay, now I need to make a planet. I adjust the opacity on the BG layer to make it easier to see what I'm doing on the next layer. Then I use the curve tool in conjunction with clicking the delete button on my computer in order to create a circle. This circle will serve as the basis for my planet. Initially the circle is kind of big, so I resize it more to the way I want it. Then I click the wand select tool in order to select the interior of it. Then on a normal layer, I select an orange type color and paste that into it using the paint bucket tool. I want to add some shading to the edge of this planet. So I select the black color from the palette and use the airbrush tool, carefully going around one side. Because I have the interior of the planet selected, none of the black will go on the outside, so I don't need to worry about coloring inside the lines. Now that I have the planet shading the way I want it, I move it up a layer. Then on a lower layer, I select a slightly more reddish color and start using the airbrush tool to populate the inside. Notice that I keep the planet selected. That way, again, I don't have to worry about coloring outside the lines. I want to do a little bit more detail on these lower lines, so I'll thin the airbrush down and start making individual lines. Here, I'll zoom in to make it easier to see. Individually creating lines using the airbrush tool like this creates a cloud-like movement type effect, sort of like what you would see on the outside of the gas giant Jupiter. You know, the gigantic planet in our solar system. I'll keep at this until the line wraps all the way around the planet. There we go, that looks good. Well, except for the lines that went out of whack there. Thankfully, I can use the eraser tool, set to a certain density, to erase the lines while leaving the rest of the lines relatively intact. Having accomplished that, I'll take the airbrush tool again, I'll set it to a larger brush width than I had before, and start going over the lines on a different layer. That way, I don't accidentally interfere with how the lines look. And now that I've got that done, I'll start applying the same airbrush technique to the upper lines and then to the very top of the planet. Okay, that's done. Now I'm going to set the airbrush tool to the noise filter. Notice how it changes the look of the airbrush. I'm getting a little bit of a sandy looking gradient to it, which really helps me nail the gas giant aesthetic that I was looking for. I'll make some lines out of that, and then I'll start slowly applying it in thinner areas everywhere else. Once that's done, I'll reset the airbrush tool back to its default filter and start going over everything. Same color, same density, same layer. Then once that's done, I get the idea to try out the grainy sidewalk filter and go over the entire layer with that, just to get a little bit of a difference in texture. Now I believe I'll need another filter, so I'll create one, set the airbrush tool over to noise, and go over everything one more time with the noise filter. Then I'll create another layer. This time I try out the rusted sidewalk filter. I like the look of this filter, but I want to try it in a slightly different way. So I go into the blend mode option and start going through all the filters to see how they'll look. I also play with the opacity until I find the desired effect. Once I find the right look for one layer, I'll do the same thing with multiple layers. The combination of different effects will help me achieve the aesthetic that I want. Once I've got the right look down, I'll go into the airbrush tool, slim it down, and start imitating the line look that I have up top. I'm really liking the look of the planet so far. It really nails what I was looking for. Unfortunately, trouble often strikes when you least expect it. At this point, for no particular reason, Sai crashed.
It's okay, it's saved. It's saved. It's fine, it's fine, it's fine. It's fine.
Now I got lucky because Sai auto-saved. It doesn't always do that. Save and save often, guys. Anyway, now that I've got the lines the way I want them, I play around with the blend mode tools, again, to find the right effect. And now that that's all handled, I'll select the line layer, go into the color option, and switch the line to match the color. That way I don't have a big black outline around the planet. I'll fiddle around with the planet folder for a little bit, and then ultimately decide that I don't want it. So I kill it. With that being achieved, I bring the opacity on the background layer up, so now I can see how the planet looks against the star-speckled background. I feel that the background layer is a little too bright, so I create a new layer, select the color black and the airbrush tool, and start going over everything with black. I'm careful to avoid the planet itself. I don't want to black that in. Then I adjust the opacity of the black layer a bit. Now I'm going to copy the planet's circle vector layer. This duplicate circle will serve as the basis for a sun, which will go behind the planet. After dragging the duplicate circle behind the planet, I add a couple of layers behind it. Then I take and move it so that it's just off to the side of the planet. Again, I use the Wand Select tool to select the interior of the new sun circle. Then I come up with a color that I want, a sort of yellow, and paste it inside with the Paint Bucket tool. Then I wand select the outside of the sun, and start using the airbrush tool to create some effects. First, I'll create a type of glow around the sun using the rusted sidewalk brush. Then I'll add the noise brush to get a little bit more variety to the effect. Finally, I'll select the grainy sidewalk effect and a lighter yellow color. Okay, I like the way that glow looks. Now on a separate layer, I'm going to use the default airbrush and go all the way around the glow effect to extend it. This creates the sort of hue that you would see when looking directly into the sun. Don't look directly into the sun, people. It's a bad idea. I've got a pretty good looking glow so far. Now I'm going to add a little bit of a mini glow here and there. This creates a lens flare type effect. This wouldn't be necessary if I was using Photoshop, because Photoshop allows you to create lens flare using the lens flare filter. And once again, I'll play around with the blend tool to achieve the effects I want. So far, so good. From here on out, it's just minor touch-ups and a lot of fiddling with different blend modes to achieve the desired effect. Sit back and enjoy the show. And here we have the finished product. Beautiful, ain't it? Want more art tips? Leave a comment or subscribe. And if you want to see more art, visit my DeviantArt page. The link is in the description.
And I'll see you next time, art peeps.